Today we will be discussing the Extra Help benefit. The Extra Help benefit is also known as the low-income subsidy, but we refer to it as Extra Help because some people don't associate themselves with having low income, even though they may qualify for the benefit. The Extra Help benefit helps individuals with their drug costs, including their help pay for their deductible, helping to pay for their monthly premium, and helping lower their co-pays at the pharmacy. The co-pays vary by year. In 2013, the co-pay amount is $2.65 for generics, $6.60 for brand names. There are income and resource limits. It is 150% of the federal poverty level is the income limit, and the resource limits vary each year, and we will provide you with the information about those numbers. We typically assist people with the Extra Help benefit when we determine that they are below the income and resource limits and that they are paying too much for their medication. So whenever we see that they're below those guidelines, we usually suggest applying for the benefit. Even if they aren't having problems with the cost of their medications, it still can be a help for them in the future. Some people choose to apply that even if they're above the guidelines. We, of course, offer to assist them with that, even if they are above those guidelines. So let's get started at looking at the application for Extra Help. This application is on Social Security's website, and you can see the web address up here. So feel free to write that down, pause the video, write it down. I actually have it bookmarked up here, so that might be an option for you if you're helping many individuals with the application on your computer. We're also going to go over the paper form. Sometimes you can't get the online form to work and you need to use the paper form. And in fact, we are limited today without having an individual's specific information with being able to enter their information and move forward with the online application. So we will be limited with how far we can get with the online application, and at that point we'll look at the paper application. So you can see this front page of applying for the Extra Help benefit on Social Security's website. And feel free to take the time and read this on your own, but what you would want to do is click Apply Now. Then there's more information. Again, feel free to read that, and you can click Next. And you can see there's how the online application works there at the bottom if you choose to do that. So these are the first questions. Are you assisting someone with this application? The answer would be yes, because you are, but it really doesn't matter either way what you put. But if you do select yes, it will ask for your information. If the individual got an application in the mail from us, chances are likely, us meaning Social Security, chances are likely that they did not, or if they did, it's gone now, so you can check no. They would need to have Medicare or be about to receive Medicare in order for you to be assisting them with this application, yes. And then these next two questions are trying to get at how have they received their Medicare? Is it through age, which is this first question, or is it through disability, which is the second question? The next is the state, so that would be Kentucky. Next would be their marital status. I'm just going to put whatever to get to the next page. And then this final question is asking about their assets. And the online application is great because it updates it every year. So you can see these are the 2013 levels. You would always want to check no or not sure on the online application. If you check yes, it will tell you you do not qualify for this benefit. So no or not sure, and then let Social Security do the processing. You can see the information here that talks about what you should not count towards their assets, or resources rather. So there's that information there for your reference. So then you go on to the next page, and this talks about what information you will need in order to complete the application. So on this next page, the first form is about you, the person who's completing the form. And this is if you check that someone else is assisting with the application. So you'll put in your name, then you'll put in the agent, you put in us as an agency. You can skip other because we selected the agency, so you don't need to fill anything out. You can feel free to put our office phone number and our office address so that you don't have to put your own personal address. Moving down is about the individual you're helping. So you put in their first name, middle initial, last name. If they have a junior or senior or any of these Roman numerals on their social, that would need to go on there. It needs to match what is on their Social Security card. Next, you'd put their Social Security number and their date of birth. Next, you'd ask them if they've worked in the last 2 years. You would check yes or no. If you check yes, it will go to another question on a subsequent page asking about their wages. If you check no, it'll skip over those questions. Next is asking if the spouse would also wish to apply. Typically with married couples, they do. Sometimes we actually hear situations where one spouse receives the benefit and the other doesn't. So in that case, the spouse wouldn't need to apply again. And you've already answered this question, so you can see that this answer carried over from the previous page. And you can see here their terminology. If you selected yes, they're not eligible for extra help. So, and it talks about the Medicare Savings Program. We're going to discuss the Medicare Savings Program application in another video. If you are assisting an individual with the Medicare Savings application, I suggest checking this box that no, do not send information to the state for them to do the Medicare Savings Program application. You are already doing it. Chances are it'll get processed faster with the application that you are completing for them. And I worry about having more than one application in the system at the same time. Will that get things confused? Might they get a denial letter for the duplicate and confuse them? So if we are completing the application, I would check no, do not send information to the state if we are completing the Medicare Savings Program application. Since we put on the previous page that the individual is married, you would then put the spouse's information here and Social Security number and date of birth and whether the spouse worked in 2012 or 2013. Now let's move on to the contact information. The first question asks about whether they have moved in the last 3 months. If they have, go ahead and check that box. If they've not, leave it blank. Then you would put their mailing address, including city or town, state, and zip code, and then their phone number. If they have someone who they have requested be the contact person, say the client has asked that you speak with their power of attorney, or the client has asked that you speak with their son or daughter, you can put that information down here if that's what the client chooses. So then you would check next. Now, because this information does not match up, I'm guessing there's no Jane Doe with that Social Security number. It will not go through, and you can see here it's got these issues. Well, actually, that's got the issues from what I left blank. But it will not go through, and it will tell you that there are problems. Now, you may actually use the information that the client provided you and still get errors saying there are problems. And sometimes you'll need to ask them, does Social Security have a different date of birth on file? Or does your Social Security card or Medicare card have a suffix at the end, have a junior, have a senior? If none of those questions help resolve your issue, or you've tried so many times that the Social Security website kicks you out, you will need to do the paper application. So let's look at the paper application and go over the second half of the application and get you familiar with the paper application in case you do need to resort to it. The application comes in a closed envelope, and when you open it, there is a folded book format application and an an envelope that you will use to mail it in to Social Security that already has the postage taken care of and everything. So the first page of the booklet has a lot of information on it. And we actually have older versions of the applications. These are the applications that Social Security has provided to us. So you'll see some of the numbers are funky. But with you'll be able to figure out what numbers you should be asking of the client. I like to point out that you must use black ink only on the paper application. You have to use black ink for this extra help. You can see here, keep your numbers, letters, and X's inside the box. Use only capital letters. It is very particular. You have to use an X. Do not use a check or color in the box. So this is on the paper application. Feel free to remind yourself. One of the pitfalls of the paper application is that unlike the online form, it can't skip over irrelevant questions. So you will have to use judgment to determine what you should complete or not. So here's the first question, which gets the applicant's name and Social Security number and date of birth, just like the online form. And then if they are married and living with a spouse, you fill out the information for the spouse. Whether the spouse is applying or not, you need to fill out the spouse's information. The only time you would not fill this out is if they are not married or not living with their spouse. Then this question asks if the spouse would also like to apply. So you would check yes or no. And then this question is about the resources. And you can see these numbers are different because, again, this is an old application. So always refer to the most recent numbers that we have provided for you. You can check yes if you're doing the paper form, but it says here that you're not eligible for extra help. So it's not going to make much sense to submit it. So moving on, they try to get an idea of the assets that the person has. And these are questions that are also on the online application once you get past the page that we ended on. You can see it's combined total of all bank accounts. So you're going to combine their checking account, savings account, and CDs. If they have any stocks, bonds, savings bonds, anything like that, that goes in the next line. And any cash at home or anywhere else would go here. If they do not have money in that category, you would check none. And one thing I will tell you is that on the online application, you have to enter at least $1. So if they tell you there's nothing in their bank account, there's nothing in their, they don't have any stocks and bonds or anything, ask them if they have $1, in change in their couch somewhere. Just explain that you have to put down $1 or you cannot move forward on the application. That's not the case with the paper application because it's not instantly processed, but that is the case with the online application. Question 5 has, I actually ask it in a different way, but you're trying to understand whether this individual will be having to pay funeral or burial expenses out of the aforementioned resources. And the way I usually ask is, do you have a prepaid funeral or burial account that will pay for all of your burial expenses? If they do, then that's all paid for. None of this money up here is going to have to pay for it. So then you would check no. None of this money is going to be used for funeral or burial expenses. For most people, they have not paid all of their expenses. Some people have a life insurance policy, but when you ask them, they don't think it'll pay for all of their expenses. So in that case, you would leave this blank. If some of this money is going to pay for some of their funeral or burial expenses, leave this blank. Question 6 asks if they have any real estate besides where they live. And you can see examples of other real estate here. And it is separate from their home and property on which it is located. So if they do have an adjoining lot, you can go ahead and say no. But if they do own other property, you would say yes here. And what will happen is Social Security will probably give them a call to try to get an estimate of the value. Question 7 is another confusing one. it's trying to understand how many people live in the household. So the individual and the spouse are not counted in this number. They are, if it's just the two of them or just the individual, you would check none. If they have a relative living in their household, receiving financial support from the applicant or the applicant's spouse, you would count how many people there are. So for instance, if they had a daughter and a granddaughter living with them who do not pay rent, that's one way that we usually can get at if they are receiving at least 1/2 of their financial support. So if they don't pay rent and they don't pay utilities, that's usually a ballpark estimate. So if you have a couple who have a daughter and a granddaughter living with them who do not pay rent or utilities, then you would go ahead and check 2. The 2 are the daughter and the granddaughter. The couple would count as 0 because they are not other relatives, and that's what this question is trying to get at. Now, if these people if the applicant has a friend living with him or her, you would not count that friend because it is relative. So friends do not count. Friends do not help them get the extra help. Question 8 is regarding income. For all of our benefits, you always use gross income. If the individual tells you what they draw, so what is deposited in their bank account, and they do not receive the Medicare Savings Program and Medicare is deducted every month, you need to add the Medicare premium back in. So again, before deductions, that's always important to tell. Sometimes it takes a little bit of detective work to figure out what their gross income is. If they have their Social Security award letter, it will say on there, it'll usually be the top line, and then it'll say all the deductions, and then the bottom line will be actually what they get deposited, but you want the gross amount. So again, put in the amount that they receive for each of these categories. If they don't receive anything in that category, be sure to check off none, so Social Security doesn't, if you leave it blank, so Social Security doesn't think that they might get something you just don't know what it is. And then there's the other category down here, and again, you have to specify other. I will point out that these disability payments that are referred to here, private or state disability payments, are not Social Security disability. So that's different. If they're getting it through their former employer or something like that, that would be down here. And so you would specify what it is and then put the amount. Question 9 asks if any of the amounts included in question 8 decreased during the last 2 years. So if any of their income sources have decreased in the last 2 years, you would check yes. If they just received Social Security, you would check no, because it has not decreased. This statement here talks about what questions you may be able to skip. If the individual has worked in the last 2 years, they have to answer questions 10 through 14. If their spouse has worked in the last 2 years, they need to answer questions 10 through 14. Otherwise, you can skip to question 15. So most of the time, you will not be filling out these questions only if the individual has worked in the last 2 years. So question 10 asks about wages in this calendar year. And sometimes people have retired in the year in which you were helping them, so just estimate the amount that it was in this year. And if they retired the year before and you still need to be filling out this application, then you can click check none. Question 11 asks about self-employment, and it asks about net earnings. And if the net is a negative, so if they actually lost money, you check the box down here to indicate that it was a net loss. Question 12 asks if your wages or your self-employment wages have decreased in the last 2 years. Question 13 is an example of the years being totally funky because of us having old applications, but it's asking if you have stopped working in the last 2 years or plan to stop working going forward in the next year. You would put those dates down there. Question 14 is only for those who are younger than 65 or if a spouse is younger than 65. Otherwise, you would skip this. And again, this is only for the individuals who have worked for the last 2 years. So question 14 is really only for individuals who have worked in the last 2 years and are under age 65 or have a spouse that fits those requirements. And this question tries to get at whether people have expenses that help them to work. So you can see the examples here, and then go ahead and check yes or no, depending on for whom you need to answer. Question 15 is that question about the Medicare savings programs. So again, we discussed that on the online application. And then this last page is the signature page, but it's more than just the signature page, it's also their contact information. So be sure to complete that. There's the signatures here. Their phone number is up here. That's one that's frequently missed because it's kind of an odd location. Their mailing address is here. Again, that question whether they've moved in the last 3 months. If they have a friend or power of attorney or whomever they would like Social Security to contact, that information goes down here. Section B is your information, so you would check agency, and you would put down the individual or your name and then our office's information here. And then this last page here is just more information for them to read. Now this final page is the receipt that we send to people. So that is what we send out, whether you complete the online application or the paper application, that we send to the client. So if you submit the online application, you'll go ahead and print out a copy for them. If you are with them and can have them review the paper application with you, great. Otherwise, you'll need to send them the paper application and the envelope along with this receipt. So this receipt just explains to them what the extra help benefit is and what they can expect with their processing. You want to put the date you completed the application on this line here. And again, we will provide you with copies of this. And here is that they understand that they should receive a letter from Social Security in the next 4 to 6 weeks, so they'll know how long they should be waiting. We have found that the online applications seem to have a faster processing, which is another reason that we do suggest at least trying the online application if you can, that we at least give them a conservative estimate for how long to wait. We do suggest if they're awarded extra help, they should call us back and we can look over their drug coverage. So if you are just doing applications, if you're an application assistant, or if you do not have the training to do drug plan comparisons, have them call us back and we'd be more than happy to help with that. And our number is on here too. So that's also our number so they can have reference for the future if they need it. So that's it for extra help. Thank you for your time and attention, and feel free to look over the other application videos.